This is a $70 gallon of paint. Is it worth the extra cost? This is a $15 gallon of paint. Probably as thin as water, but maybe it's great. We'll see. Okay, both gallons of paint are white. Both are satin finish. One was $15, one was $70. This brand is Lucite. This brand is Sherwin-Williams. 5 times the cost. What justifies that? Let's put it to the test. The $15 gallon of paint has a plastic lid. The expensive one had a metal lid. I'm expecting the cheap one to be a little thinner, maybe feel more runny. So far that looks about the same there. Now both have the exact same roller covers, so everything else is exactly the same. The only difference will be the paint. All right, let's put a dividing line on this wall. All right, I'm going to start with this one. Maybe I won't tell you guys what this one is yet, and we'll compare afterwards, and then I'll reveal it at the end. So 5 times the difference on one of these. I'm telling you, if the expensive one coated in 1 coat and the cheap one took 3 coats to go over this dark color, I think I would spend the extra money. But if they're both comparable, boy, I would save the money for sure. So far, this one feels a little bit watery, but we are going over a very dark color. Now, all paints will look better with at least 2 coats. All paints will. I don't care how expensive it is. We'll do 1 coat on each side, and then we'll compare the difference. After it dries, we'll come back and do a 2nd coat. Okay, on to paint number 2. And again, I'm not going to tell you yet which one. We've mixed them up on you. We'll reveal it later in the video. Okay, just like I did the other side, let me load up one more time. I want to get good coverage, but I don't want it so much that it's going to be dripping on me. Okay, let's let that dry. We'll come back to it after appropriate drying time. Okay, our paint samples have dried. Let's remove this divider tape and see the reveal. Okay, with that off, you definitely can start to see the differences. Okay, looking at the different coats, 1 coat over dark color. Now, had this been a light color, normal, neutral color, I think this might have done it in 1 coat. It's very possible. It definitely seems to be very good quality. This one definitely was thinner, and when you roll it, it was splattering all over my hands. So, as you may have guessed, that's the expensive paint, and that's the cheap paint. So for my time, the best paint, the expensive paint was worth it. Let's do a 2nd coat of the cheap paint and see if we can get it to look the same quality. Okay, get a good amount of paint on the roller. Now I did notice this is thinner and it splatters a lot. So depending on your situation, that may be quite annoying. Okay, a lot better coverage that time on a 2nd coat going over the dark color. Let me load up one more time. 2nd coat, let's let that dry. Now, with the 2nd coat of the cheap paint versus the expensive paint, to me, they look very comparable, especially when this one dries. I can see the old dark color shining through. So 2 coats of the cheap paint is equivalent to 1 coat of the expensive paint. Let's go with a 2nd coat as well. Okay, got that all loaded up. And I guess I'll do the same as what I did with the other paint, as I loaded up my roller just to make sure we had really, really good coverage. Okay, we'll let that dry and we'll do a final reveal. Okay, so coat 2 is dry to the touch. That's the cheap and expensive paint, and that is the expensive paint. So you can still clearly see a difference. You can still see the background color showing through on the cheap paint after 2 coats. And after 2 coats of the expensive paint, it looks pretty much perfect. You'd be very happy with that. So I'm telling you, going over this dark color with cheap paint, it would take 3 or 4 coats. Who wants to do 4 coats? Nobody. Nobody wants to do 4 coats of paint. Way too much work. You should value your time as a painter or home improvement or DIYer, so go ahead and buy better quality paint. Now the Sherwin-Williams brand paint knocked it out of the park. It clearly performed better, so much better. One coat of the good stuff was equivalent to 2 or 3 coats of the cheap stuff. So spend a little more money, get good paint. However, I have noticed there's a sweet spot around the $40 a gallon price point. There's so many good choices to pick from, right around $40 a gallon. So think about that. I also noted for this experiment, we used pretty cheap roller covers. These were very inexpensive, and they actually introduced some new bumps and unevenness. This wall was pretty smooth to begin with, and with a cheap roller cover, you're starting to get some bumps on the wall. You may or may not notice it in the final coat, but don't go too cheap on the roller covers. Buy good covers. You will be well rewarded with your final product. Good luck. I bet you can do it yourself. Another quick tip that I just remembered, when I was applying the cheap paint, it was splattering all over the place. I can't stand paint splatter. Such a mess, not worth your time. Buy a little higher quality paint.